In the late 2000s, I began my first steps into the world of anime and manga through the series Naruto. It captivated me in many ways in such a short amount of time compared to anything I had ever watched or read before. And at school, it was hard to talk about this. No one I had met yet was into anime or manga, nor was it something anyone was really interested in. And it sucked because I couldn't express how amazing this series was to people because it was a medium they just didn't care for or even understand. So one day after school, I started browsing forums online as well as YouTube, and whenever Naruto was discussed, so were these two other anime series. They were of course One Piece and Bleach, and when put together, they were known as the Big Three. Years ago, you could not escape any discussion based on anime and manga without these industry legends popping up into the conversation. At the time, they were the biggest, longest, and most profitable anime and manga series to ever touch the globe and gain worldwide appeal. And that's what this video is about, to share and discuss what made each of these series work and the effect they had on not only the industry, but on the world in general. This video is also to inform others that even if two of these series have already reached their ending long ago, there's still always going to be a part of the Big Three. There won't ever be a Big Three again, or series that take the place of Naruto and Bleach to join alongside One Piece. It's not just a number that represents the three most popular manga titles at a certain point in time, but three industry icons that have cemented their spot for creating a significant change within the medium of anime and manga. This is why the Big Three are so iconic. Believe it or not, back in the mid to late 2000s, this little bird app was not very prevalent when it came to the topic of anime and manga as it is nowadays. The world right now is a completely different playground, having series such as Jujutsu Kaisen, Attack on Titan, Boruto, and many more trending each week when a new chapter or episode releases. And honestly, I never thought we would be living in a world where I see anime and manga trending worldwide right at the top of one of the most popular apps in the world. The reason for this is because, as mentioned before, it was a completely different environment around the year 2004, a whole 2 years before Twitter would even be published. Anime and manga back then was nowhere near as popular and mainstream as it is right now, and this continued on for a few more years from what I can remember from my own personal experience. And while the medium was a lot smaller back then compared to what it is today, the Big Three at this time were the giants, bringing in others into the world that anime and manga had to offer. They were, as many say, the gateway to this brand new experience. And I'm not saying that around this time Bleach, Naruto, and One Piece were always the top dogs that got newcomers into anime and manga, as every year you'll get a breakout hit such as Death Note that skyrockets in popularity and therefore draws in others. But the difference with shows such as Death Note is that, well, they ended. This was not something the Big Three could relate to, as while they may not have been the #1 most popular series during certain years, they would still remain consistently popular throughout their time being serialized. They were always there year after year with continuing stories for people to feast their eyes upon, and having these series continue to pump out content that was consistently engaging was what kept the Big Three alive. Having a new episode and chapter being released weekly meant there was something to always talk about. This also helped the Big Three survive for much longer than other series in terms of popularity, as this consistent schedule would always be bringing people back to the following week to continue the story. When a manga or anime ends, you don't know when there will be new content again or if there ever will be. But if you were a fan of Naruto, Bleach, or One Piece, that was something you didn't need to worry about at all. And while Naruto and Bleach have ended, both series have released a staggering amount of chapters, which, as you could imagine, was plenty of content to get engaged with while they were being published. They were the main ongoing series that felt like they were never going to end, so it's actually fitting for them to be called the Big Three. They were a perfect example of how successful and popular a series can be, as for a lot of its lifetime relied on word of mouth alone, as years ago anime was not a thing that was blowing up on Twitter or any other social media apps. Well, that's half true. During the late 2000s, YouTube would be one of the first main sources that would help spread anime and manga to every point on the globe. And this was mainly through videos titled AMVs. In case you don't know, AMV stands for Anime Music Video, and they were bloody everywhere on this damn website. Majority of the time, these videos consisted of a really cool fight scene having some heavy rock or really any type of music put over it. And back in school, I was obsessed with this kind of stuff. They've dramatically died down a lot nowadays, but back then you could not escape these videos, as Naruto, Bleach and One Piece would always be the most viewed AMVs, getting spread around like wildfire. Especially when it came to Naruto, as it honestly felt like YouTube was a fan-made Naruto site because of how many AMVs I had seen come out of that series. Unfortunately, a lot of these AMVs have been deleted due to copyright, which really sucks because that's a piece of history gone forever. But to give you some context of how the Big Three took charge of this website, here are some videos that went absolutely wild back in the day. And the thing is, these aren't even the most viewed videos for each retrospective series, but since majority have been wiped from the internet, it's unfortunately something I can't show off. So, we know how the Big Three was continuously made a topic of interest within discussions, but what exactly made them such a fun subject of interest to praise about with others for so many years straight? Well, there's a lot of things, but what I find more interesting is how each manga has a specific standout selling point that was so different from each other that they were trying to compete against. Of course, what I feel like each series excels at compared to the other is completely down to my opinion, so you're more than welcome to see things a different way. But for me personally, I believe this is what made each of them stand among equal footing for so many years. On this channel, I talk about Naruto a lot, so I don't want to repeat many things on why I think so many elements from the series works. But if you are interested in hearing more detailed thoughts, do go check out my previous videos. If I had to choose something that Naruto does amazingly, then it's having really well thought out characters that make the lead up into the conflicts they enter a much more grander experience. Fights by themselves are cool and all, but you're just not going to get the same emotional attachment compared to characters whose stories are being told through these battles. When watching or reading Naruto, you know the core message the fight is trying to convey simply because of what characters have been placed on the field. Whether it be a fight that shows how the stories of the past generation were no myth, or a fight between friends that's really just a conflict of two opposing different kinds of loneliness. It's expressed to near perfection to where there's been very few times that I felt unsatisfied from how Kishimoto constructs his fights to fit perfectly into the story and messages he's attempting to deliver. This isn't even mentioning how much of a genius Kishimoto is when it comes to the way he choreographs his fights, as the way he panels and structures his manga helps lead into really beautiful events once animated, surpassing what was already amazing material. Granted, not all of the fights are animated to this caliber, but when it is, it becomes such a surreal sequence of events that enhances the writing that has led to these moments even more, making it become a fight that you're surely enough going to come back and revisit a few dozen times. I also really appreciate how the anime isn't afraid to change the art style to create a more immersive and cinematic experience, such as Obito's fight against the Mist Ninja, as it's completely filled with darker and more moody colours to express the anguish and loss of hope on the world that Obito is currently feeling, to then switching up the colour palette completely towards the end point of the episode to represent Obito's awakening to seeing what the world truly is. There's a lot more I could talk about with what I think works so well for Naruto, but my channel's main focus is Naruto, so I'd rather give some more space towards the other two series of the Big Three that I don't talk about as often. So, with that being said, let's move on to One Piece, the most successful manga out of the Big Three. While Naruto and Bleach dominated the West, this was absolutely nothing compared to the behemoth One Piece was in Japan, and for arguably deserved reasons. You will never find a more greater sense of adventure than you do with One Piece, as I've yet to find a series that's so rich with lore at every location the main cast stumble onto. No two island is the same, which makes it even more incredible as when the story progresses, you find out these past islands actually do share something in common, and that's their connection to the greater schemes of the continuous moving narrative. And I think that's one of the craziest things about One Piece, as there's always something moving in the story, whether it be in the forefront or in the background. And while at times the story can feel like it's moving at a snail's pace, at least you know that the world isn't staying still. I think what further adds to this sense of adventure and discovery is also the vast and creative designs Oda comes up with for his characters. While I think this can be a hit or miss at times for myself personally, I can't deny how truly recognizable and iconic his way of designing characters can be, as it leads to some really beautiful and superb creations. And another thing that can't go unnoticed is how the Straw Hats get completely new costume designs in almost every single arc of the story, as it really breaks the norm of characters wearing the same costume throughout the entirety of the series. And like I said, this doesn't just apply to Luffy, but the Straw Hats too, as they match the type of clothing that would be suitable for the territory they're exploring. It's pretty amazing that Oda has been continuing this story for 20 plus years, as each fan of the series is still finding arcs to call their favourite right up to this very moment. For me personally, the latest arc in Wano right now is definitely a contender for my favourite arc, especially thanks to the immaculate direction the anime has transformed itself to up the quality for a weekly series. While this quality is a far cry from how it looked back when the Big Three was at its peak in popularity, there were still some pretty great cases of strong direction, especially from Sabaody to Marineford, which was the time frame One Piece started to increase in popularity dramatically, and for very good reason, as it's arguably some of the strongest content in the manga and anime. One Piece is still ongoing to this very day, so I'm interested to see what's left to praise and explore in the world Oda has left to tell. But for now, let's move on to the next icon of the Big Three that we can't possibly forget to mention, and that's Bleach. Bleach is for sure the most different compared to Naruto and One Piece, as while these two series were set in a fictional world, Bleach's story brings the battle right to our front door by taking place in our own everyday life set in modern society. In comparison to Naruto and One Piece, I always felt for me personally there was a greater sense of pending death that fills the air with a heavy feeling of opposing strength because of this very reason. Having these all-out death battles between Soul Reapers and Shinigamis that take place within our own timeline in new worlds or even right in the heart of our living space, really hammering in the theme of just how precious and fragile our life is as humans. It's something that we truly can't compete with, which makes the world of Bleach give an uneasiness and at times terrifying aura to it. But it's really genius with how these themes tie into the core elements of the story, as that uneasy sense of death makes sense since the world is inhabited with Soul Reapers and man-eating hollows. And that feeling of overwhelming strength is something that is displayed many times visually through certain battles where the spiritual pressure a character gives off before even swinging their swords is enough to create a sense of regret for the opposing individual. While we're on the topic of imagery, it's no controversial take to say Kubo has the most beautiful artwork out of the Big Three. The sheer amount of detail you can see in the way he draws his characters is incredible. I mean, just look at how detailed he draws his characters' hands, as it's not only detailed for the sake of it, but detailed enough to emphasize how strong it is, as well as how many countless battles it must have been used in, telling us its own story without any words being needed. The very sharp design of Kubo's characters also helped to convey how dangerous and threatening they are, as it's like touching a part of their body is enough to get you cut. I've always found that the Bleach manga looks the best in the standard black and white manga formula. I don't know how to explain it that well, but maybe it's to do with majority of the characters having a black and white color scheme, or that the art design is strong enough to make it stand successfully on its own. Compared to Naruto and One Piece, I feel like these two series work a lot better in color because of how vibrant the characters and world are. But meanwhile for Bleach, a lot of what you'll be getting is black and white, which works really well for a manga format as I said before. So while for me personally, I never found the Bleach anime to look as good when adapted to color compared to the other two series from the Big Three, for me what's undeniable is how strong the Bleach anime was in remaining consistent for so long for a weekly series in terms of animation and direction. While not every episode would be stunning, nearly all of the episodes were really solid and impressive to watch, especially during the later half of the show. And what's great is that the Bleach anime is finally confirmed to be returning sometime next year. And so I am really hoping and praying that the return of the anime will at least match up to the quality the series was bringing to the table all those years ago. And if handled correctly, hopefully more people will start to take notice of Bleach's spot within the big three. The Naruto anime has concluded, the One Piece anime won't stop till its conclusion for sure, so it's only right that the Bleach anime gets its deserved chance to finish its story in animated format. And if there's anything I want you to take away from this video, then it's how each one of these series should be treated the same. It's fine to like one more than the other, and it's also clear that one may be more successful than the rest. But when I say treated the same, I mean it in terms of respect. These behemoths really blew up the anime and manga industry across the world, to the point where they practically revolutionized how we see ninjas, pirates, and reapers. Well, that's for me personally. However, you may not even like any of the big three, and that's fine, you don't need to. But I think it's incredibly important to acknowledge how truly defined they were for paving the way for not only a large wave of newcomers to get invested into Japanese storytelling, but for also in becoming inspirations for future hit series to follow. This is exactly why the big three are so legendary and why they gained that once in a lifetime title that cannot be handed down to newer series that may turn out to be more successful. The big three is a crucial part of anime and manga history that I feel many should recognize and respect. After all, there's a solid reason why the big three to this very day still remain iconic. So that's it for this video. It was really fun talking about this topic since I grew up during the time the big three were pretty much at their peak, being a conversation you can never escape from in the anime and manga industry back in the day. As I've mentioned numerous times before in this video, I find it crazy how different the world is today in terms of anime and manga becoming mainstream, along with many series that have skyrocketed to success, which is really an undescribable feeling of happiness. Yet with the anime and manga industry continuously growing in different ways, the big three have always remained in multiple conversations when it comes to comparing them to newer series, or just being titles that people still love to recommend to others. And I think it's 100% understandable, as these manga are something everyone should at least have a glance at. So if you did watch this video to the end and haven't seen any of these series from the big three, or maybe you've only checked out one or two of them, then please do yourself a favor and check them out. You might just find your new favorite manga series that you'll fall in love with. If you've liked anything I've talked about in regards to this discussion around the big three, then please give the video a like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you can get notified when I upload my next video. It's for free and it lets me know you're enjoying my content, so if you're at least a slight bit interested, you might as well stick along for the ride. I've also started up a Twitter account recently, so if you want to talk to me over there about anything you want, then feel free to follow me and message me anything. It's also the place where I'm most active when you don't see a lot of uploads from me, but I am working on uploads. It's just a very slow and tedious process. But as well, do feel free to comment below if there's anything you'd like to talk about, whether it's to do with the big three or manga and anime in general. Whatever the discussion is, I'll make sure to check it out. And with this, thank you all so much for watching the video to the very end. Hope you all have a great day and bless.